Hello, beautiful. And what I really want to know is what is good in your life today? I'm Kia, and this is another episode of the Female Veterans Podcast. Today, I have with me Amy Ritter. She is a co board member of Hope for Vets. And this is an organization that's really close to both of our hearts. We're going to talk about it a lot more later. She's an Army vet. She served 7 years with the reserves. And I'm really excited to hear her story. So before we do, I want to give a shout out to my sponsor, Grunt Style. If you have not gone to gruntstyle.com, go and check out their apparel. Go get your branch at least, your t-shirt. I got a Navy t-shirt. And I love that thing. And I always get compliments on it too. And they have every branch, but they also have all sorts of cool apparel for men, women, and children. And if you'd like to use code BAKER, you can get 10% off your first order. And I really love what they stand for. Their foundation helping veterans and the fact that they employ veterans and that they're veteran owned. So support our brothers and sisters and go check out that organization. And with that, I want to say welcome to the Female Veterans Podcast, Amy.
Thank you so much, Kia, for having me. I appreciate the invitation. And definitely, guys out there listening, check out Grunt Style. I love their apparel. It is very comfortable to wear.
It's nice.
Yeah.
I like it. I'm proud to represent them because it's good stuff. It's quality t-shirts. They wash well. Because, sometimes you get stuff and you're like, this is going to be so awesome. And then you wear it once and you wash it and then it looks like crap.
Exactly.
So, yeah, but thank you for that. I'm sure they will appreciate hearing that in this episode.
Absolutely.
So tell me, let's jump right into it. What made you join the military?
I actually had a girlfriend in high school that was talking to an Air Force recruiter and an Army recruiter at the same time. And she happened to drop my name and he looked me up to see what my ASVAB scores were, the Army recruiter. And I was like, yeah, I was waiting to see if the Air Force guy called. You called first and we were going to go together. I left, she stayed behind, and the rest is history.
And did she not go to the military?
No, she did not go to the military.
That's funny. So what was boot camp like for you?
Boot camp was cold. Let me just preface it that way. Instead of being the proverbial 21 out there celebrating my birthday at the bar, I was doing basic training, doing push-ups for my 21st birthday.
Fun time.
Yes. Great rite of passage.
Where was boot camp for you?
Boot camp was Fort Lawson Woods, Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri.
Cold.
It was cold.
You went during the winter.
Yes.
I went during the winter too. So I feel that boot camp was cold energy. I went to Great Lakes in Illinois for boot camp. And it was November. I went over the holidays and it was so cold. I never felt cold like that. And I'm from Pennsylvania. I know that you're from Pennsylvania too. Actually, not far from where I went to private school. And so in Hershey, where you were used to snow.
Yes, exactly.
Cold, but it was a different kind of cold in Illinois.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So did you make a lot of good connections in boot camp?
In boot camp, I had some connections, yes. Do I still talk to them? No. Am I seeking out some of those ladies? Yes. As a veteran of the Army, I found that there's a special little group just for us called the Women Army Corps. That I did not know about. Yes. Our own little club.
We're going to have to talk about that. I want details on what do the Army girls get at the Women Army Corps. but we'll come to that. So in boot camp, for me, I actually, like you, I made connections with some of the girls there. I'm always talking about Sunny Woolsey, probably every episode. One day she'll hear it. And I didn't get a chance to really keep in touch with any of the girls there. It was a different time, the 90s going to boot.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so I didn't keep in touch with any of them, which I'm really sad about. Would I like to now? Absolutely.
Absolutely.
But one of the things that I remember is on Sundays, you go to church.
Yep.
some people would go to church. And then afterwards, we
Yep.
have a lot of free time. And we would
Hmm.
all just like sit around talking stories about what it was like growing up, where we grew up from. And because it was the first time there were so many people from all over the country in that space. Did you have a similar experience?
Oh, absolutely, Kia. Definitely, you can see the diversity that the military brings within the community itself of the individuals from the different backgrounds. And that's what I appreciated about being in the military was being able to go to a different country and see their culture and experience their culture, and then be able to bring that back to my family and incorporate what I've learned
Mhm.
from my different experiences. So I can definitely appreciate that aspect of being in the military.
Yeah, I think that's really lucky. And we're going to come to that here in a few minutes, but that you got a chance to go to a bunch of different places while you were serving. Because, in contrast to that, I joined the Navy to see the world. And I got really acquainted with Chicago because
Nice.
Bill Clinton was in office, things were different then, and they needed
Yeah.
bodies in Chicago because nobody wanted to go to that base for some reason. So because it was, the training command, it was a stricter base. There was a
Hmm.
lot less freedoms, if you will. And so a lot of people didn't want to come to that base. So that's where they needed me. So that's where I stayed the entire time I served. And I
Nice.
gotta say, I mean, it came with its perks, but I'm a little bit bitter because I really would have
Right?
loved. I had to start seeing the world after my military
Yeah.
experience, and a lot of people think that's funny. So, after you got out of boot camp, what was your training like to prepare you?
My training from boot camp was fun. The nice, lovely saying, the recruiters, oh, once you finish boot camp and you move on, you'll wish you went back to boot camp. In some aspects, absolutely, because it was fun. You were out there experiencing new things, making new friendships, learning what it was like to be in your specific branch of the military, and learning the history for some that didn't know a lot of the history. So I definitely appreciate that experience and helped mold me and bring me to where I'm at today.
And did you go to A school, or we had A school? I think it's AIT for you guys.
Yeah, advanced individual training. I chose and did not know till after I chose this occupation. The Patriot missile was my first active duty MOS. I had
Oh.
AIT, Air Defense. Artillery was Fort Bliss, El Paso, Texas, in the late 90s. They have since moved, but that's where I did my AIT up on the hill. That in itself was an experience, going from Missouri to the hot, nice, lovely environment of El Paso, Texas, right there on the border of Mexico. And we had our nice, lovely Juarez briefings on where you could go, if you were allowed to go, what not to do, all those nice, lovely conversations.
Fantastic.
Yes.
So, did you have Ellen? You can't see it, but she has a really cute cat that just came to join the conversation. So, when you were in AIT, I know for us in the hospital corps, we had a lot different freedoms than the rest of the people who were training. On the other side of the base, that was for everybody else, like every other MOS other than hospital, right? And dental, I think, too. They were on the other side of the base, and they had a very much more regimented and strict sort of daily life than we had. It was well known that the hospital corps had all the freedom, right? So what was it like for you? Were you in uniform all day, all evening, or was it more like us, where after you got out of classes and did all your physical training and all of that, that you sort of were free for the rest of the evening?
For the most part, in regards to my AIT and the specialized MOS that it was and is, yes, there were different liberties that we had versus some other uh, trainings and military occupations, in that at the end of the day, we were able to go to the shopette after our training and chow on our last formation. On the weekends, if you had a specific level APFT score, you were able to kind of like check yourself out, except for morning formations when it came to the weekends. And then I was a 14 Tango. There was also a 14 Echo position at the time that was able to have their vehicles during their post and training, because their training was a little bit longer than ours in the Tango position. So yes, there were different liberties that were available depending on what your training was for and how long. So yeah.
What, if any, obstacles did you face during that time?
The obstacles, for the most part, is going to be that male versus female requirements that the Army had during my time for your APFT requirements, your physical fitness, your height standards, where you needed to be for your height and weight requirements, because here we've got 90s and so on, different eras, and we're going off of the initial male standards from when the branches were initially started for the most part. So it's just looking at those differences between the male versus female aspects, as well as the thought processes that come with some of the sexes, if you will say, and how they feel regarding the different genders and their roles.
Wow. I mean, well said. But I totally understand what you're talking about. I think that does oftentimes carry into active duty time, like even after you get through your A school or C school training, or your AIT, and you get into the fleet or into the field, and you still are coming across some of those gender issues.
Right.
You know, even I think to this day in various aspects of serving. So tell me, what was your duty like once you graduated and it was time to get to work in your field? Where did you go?
All right. That is a very great question. At the time, my active duty MOS, again, being the Patriot missile, you could be stationed South Korea. You could be stationed with the unit that was in Germany. You could be stationed at Fort Bliss itself. And then the unit stationed at Fort Bliss would periodically do their duty and service through Southwest Asia. After the first Gulf War, they left a Patriot unit over there. So there was times where you were ultimately doing that SWA rotation. So with my active duty MOS, we lived on Suwon, our Patriot unit, and then we commuted every day to Osan in South Korea to work. That's where our Patriots were actually physically located.
So this is interesting to me, that because I think it's such a cool career. Now, I didn't as necessarily choose to go to the hospital corps per se, right? When I was talking to my recruiter, he said, you scored well enough on your ASVAB that you can pick any job you want.
Oh yeah, I got that same thing too.
Right? And I was like, I don't know what job I want to do yet. And he was like, well, what do you like to do? And I said, well, at the time I was really into like health and fitness type of things.
Yeah.
And I said, I like diet and exercise and all of these things. And he said, well, let's see, that would be a nutritionist. And he's like, a nutritionist works in the hospital corps. And that's kind of how it just evolved, because when I received my training in A school, a lot of it was like, I don't want to give anybody an IV.
Yeah.
I don't want to do blood draws on anyone, I don't think this is going to work out. And then after I got stationed, at the first clinic that I worked in medical records. So I was really happy. But we had a leadership change, and my beloved Master Chief Painter retired, and we got a new guy in. And let's just say he wasn't my beloved anything. And he decided that I was going to move into the triage clinic and see patients, you know? And that's like being a physician's assistant, right? I was
Yeah.
not feeling that. It wasn't even like do triage and check people in and out. They had me there for a moment and I was too happy. I still wasn't miserable enough. So I moved into actually seeing patients. And I did that. Fortunately, I think maybe only for a month because I had already made a request to switch into pharmacy because I was thinking of going to pharmacy C school. And so I was like, I want to go OJT in the pharmacy and see if I feel it before I commit to going
Right.
to C school. And that's what I ended up doing. And I actually never went to C school because I was doing it. And I just
Nice.
didn't want to leave because I learned everything I needed to know on the job. And I was doing the job and I did it until I got out, which I loved that. That was an amazing career choice for me. And I had so much fun working in the pharmacy at Great Lakes. So, yeah, that's how I ended up as a hospital corpsman. But for you, I'm thinking, how cool is it to work on a missile?
Yeah, it was fun.
What does that exactly involve?
For my training, it was a matter of learning to drive the equipment, putting the truck and the trailer together, hooking them up, and then being able to balance out the missile unit and get that leveled and in position for the echo component that I spoke of. My job was getting the missile, getting it balanced, getting it turned on. The echo came in, and then they were the actual part that positioned it and turned it which way it needed to be directed. And then we turned the key, they actually pushed the button.
Wow. So a whole team.
Yeah.
Eh,
And to go back to how you had mentioned about getting into which job the recruiter was talking to you about, oh, you like to work with computers. All right, here you go.
So you think that there was just a need? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe there was just a need for your job and my job at that
Right.
time. And he was sort of like, oh, the government, the military needs these jobs.
Yes.
Here's these girls. They qualified according to
Right.
their test scores to do whatever. So let's fill the need.
Yes. 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 It's actually kind of ironic for me in my experience and coming from Pennsylvania and all the Army jobs out of all the military branches and the jobs available, there was actually a girl from my high school that showed up in my AIT when I was in Texas for the echo position training.
You're kidding me. That's
not
so
at all
random.
And I was friends with her as well. She lived in the neighborhood I used to babysit for in high school.
Oh my God. I think when I was stationed at my command, I think two people came through because I worked in the pharmacy, right?
Yeah.
So if you get sick or injured, you have to go, to the clinic and then pick up your meds. And it just so happened that I was dispensing meds at the window when I get recognized by someone. I turn and look and it's like, oh my God, it's somebody I went to high school with.
Yeah.
Like how random that two Milts, as they call us, two Milton Hershey School alumni are in the Navy and end up at the, I guess for me, it's not that surprising being that they were sort of shifting all the boot camps there. So, and I was stationed there. So it was bound to happen, I suppose. So for me, maybe it's not as random, but for you, that's incredibly random, especially being in your same class, your same group.
Yes, it was very, and it wasn't an individual that you would typically expect. Like she was a cheerleader, the popular, out there in the front of everything in high school. And you just would not have expected her to show up in freaking Army AIT forklift. Seriously, of all the places, this is where you show up.
It's so crazy. It's so crazy. Yeah, I remember thinking this one kid, he went on to go to the CIA. I
Yeah.
never would. He was like a drama. He was very good in theater. That's all I remember. He was really good in theater. And then there he was, you know, it was really cool though to see people had joined. In fact, I think my high school sweetheart, I heard one of them told me my high school sweetheart joined the Navy
Nice.
and had gone. And I remember telling him I was doing everything when we were dating, and he was going to college. And I said, no, you just go to college. Go to college, have your college experience. And he was like, no, but the Navy, everything you're doing sounds cool. I'm like, I know it does sound cool, but go to college. Like, and I was going to the Navy to get money to go to college. So to me, it was like, go to university, go do that. You know, if you still want to do it through the Navy, do it later, you know, once you finish college. But no, he actually went, and I think he was in the band, the Navy band or something like that. So I was like, wow, these people joined. And there's a lot of people that were in my class that a lot of the guys are still in. They're officers or just about ready to retire or pushing their retirement, right? They're past time to retire. So they're probably going to retire soon. But like, I remember this one kid, he always sat next to me in homeroom because his last name started with A and mine starts with B, obviously.
Right.
And he was militant. So, I mean, he knew he was going to like the academy. He knew, or what did he go to West Point? He went to an academy, and he went and it was his, like, I knew it then. When I joined, everyone was like, are you serious? You were, I think maybe I was like the cheerleader girl. Like I wasn't a cheerleader or anything like that, but I was more like a hippie. Like I was like a peace, love, nice, like hippie. A flower child, like me and Drew Barrymore, right? And so it would be, me too. It would have been like, imagine Drew Barrymore just joined the military. Right. Like you would go, really? No. Yeah. That's what I was like. And that's what everyone who knew me was like. They were like, you're going to the military. So needless to say, my experience, even as myself experiencing it, was pretty interesting. Although, as I always say, I really loved serving. I had way more fun than anyone should ever have while serving in the military. I will say that. But it did cause me some complications later on, but I don't regret any of it.
Not at all. Not at all. It helped me get me to where I am today, by all means.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Even the more difficult parts looking back on it, because it led me to do exactly what I'm doing right now, which was this podcast and sharing the stories of people who have both good and bad experiences so you can compare and contrast them. And, you know, maybe some girl is thinking about going to the military and she can listen to some of these episodes and decide, you know, is it for me? So I guess my next question for you is, what was it like living in Korea? What was your day-to-day like?
The day-to-day is pretty normal in regards to you get up, do your morning routine, go do your physical fitness, your PT if there's a formation. Otherwise, you get up, do your chow, show up for morning formation. We would get on the bus and then do our nice, lovely ride to Osan, do our duty, get back on, drive home, end of the day formation, and off you go. Now, for me, I was fortunate in that we lived on Suwon, as I mentioned, and the South Koreans also had a unit on our base and our mailboxes that we had to get our mail from every day. You had to walk by their Korean chow hall. And that nice, lovely kimchi smell did not agree with my nice, lovely nostrils. Horrible smell. Yes. Rotten cabbage, not a thing of mine at all. I've tried it. Can't smell it. No. Going to the movie theaters, how we like to eat popcorn in the nice, lovely glass cases. They like to eat squid jerky, and it's just hanging there for you to choose which ones you want. Not a good smell either. They eat squid jerky like we eat popcorn at the movies.
Wow. First of all, I
Yes.
love squid. So I'm tempted to think it will be delicious, but then I
Yeah.
think about the smell and I'm like, I'm not
Yep.
sure.
But the smells, that is one thing I can definitely appreciate in my military travels, and the different foods of the cultures. By all means, I definitely can appreciate that. And listening to something you had mentioned, and then my experience as well with being there in South Korea and just looking at some of the other countries and their military, I feel in some fashion here in America, we should have something that we as American citizens are able to give back, whether we do 2 years in the military or some kind of community service. You're a mailman, a nurse, a doctor, a garbage man, something where you're contributing as a citizen of America to some fashion.
Mhm. I mean, I can't say I think that's a bad idea. I mean, I know a lot of countries require people to join the military for like 2 years or something like
Yeah.
that. But I gotta say that from my experience, I think a lot of people would do well to have served in the military. I mean, as I just said, I am the person whose personality was so off for,
Yeah.
for being in a military, like for that kind of discipline and for that kind of structure and all of
Right.
that. And it really it did serve me well. Although I did come out with a lot of disabilities, it did serve me well. And there's nothing like the the camaraderie. I was lucky
Oh,
in that I landed on a base that I think was a pretty decent. It was a pretty decent base. I mean, there were of course some bad apples there, but
mhm.
but it was a pretty decent base nonetheless. And there were a lot of men and a lot of women, right? There are sometimes like some of the stories I hear, there's like 5 women or 11 women on the base, and it's very different. Or,
Yes.
out of those 11 women, you only have one friend out of the
Yeah.
women. You know what I mean? Like the dynamics of the base are very different and sometimes very negative, and it always makes me really sad, and it always reminds me of how lucky I was to be on a base where there were tons of women everywhere, and there were tons of men. There were more men, but I never had any real serious, like there were some things that happened in retrospect that I'm like, oh, that was sexual harassment. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like, but
Right.
at the moment, at the time, and a lot talking to the my female veteran sisters that I interview, they actually a lot of times will help me to recall something. Like they'll share a story, and I'll be like, "Hey,
Hmm.
something similar like that happened to me, and I didn't even. How did I handle that?" And I'm like, "Oh, I dealt with everything with humor." And
Yep.
I just laughed it off all the time, but
Exactly.
really, wow, I was being harassed.
Absolutely.
But it wasn't to the point where, because there were such a diverse community there of
Hmm.
men and women, everything like that, that it never, it felt more like high school than, I don't know. And I certainly never felt isolated as a woman, and I never felt like it was only happening to me per se. So, and I think a lot of it is in what you can handle too. So that was, but I think if people join and they do service, I think they can take a lot out of it, and maybe there will be less of those occurrences because there would be so many more women going
Yeah.
through. But you also mentioned being like doing a service career, like
Yeah, like
just.
some kind of civil service or something
Mhm.
back, just where you can appreciate being a citizen of the country you live in and give back in some fashion, and not just, I don't want to say take, 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 but you got your givers and your takers.
Yeah, and I think that you don't have a an appreciation for your freedom as much as you do when you've given it away in order to protect other people's.
Exactly.
Because when I was serving, I don't know if you felt like this, but when I was serving, I was acutely aware that I was property of the United States government.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You know what you are, right? You're government issue. You a
Hmm.
GI.
Hmm. So when you know that your life, belongs to the man, so
Yeah.
to speak, you have when you get out of the military, you then appreciate those who are doing the job now so much,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. And I know myself as a daughter of a veteran in my community where I'm at now in Florida, I will communicate that with the military family, knowing that there is more than just the member serving. You have that spouse in the couple, you have the family, and then the extended family behind them supporting them if needed. So it does take a village for someone to serve for our country.
Especially if they have kids too.
Yes.
I mean, I always say this too. I think military spouses and the kids
Yeah.
are the backbone of the
Hmm.
country, because you have the member who's serving, yes, but and they're putting their life on the line, which is the ultimate sacrifice, but then their families pay. And like you said, and then the secondary, the parents, the aunts, the uncles, the
Yep.
cousins, everybody else who is like an offshoot of that family is then connected to that
Yeah.
ultimate sacrifice, that's potential outcome. Or at minimum, like you went to Kosovo, I remember
Yep.
you from
Yep.
your you were saying, and then and you were in Korea, right? You're in South Korea at the time, like, and I'm sure your loved ones back home are like, she's so far away. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, what's she doing? And it affects them. And I think that unless you have served, you don't have a really good understanding
Yes.
of the sacrifice that all of these people are making, not just the person who's actually on active duty. But let's talk about you and your next move. So, how long were you in Korea?
I was in Korea, I want to say about 7, 8 months. I got pregnant when I was in Korea. And at the time in my army, being a single soldier, the Korea assignment was 1 year. They had facilities there, like the officers who were there with their families, what have you. But the single soldiers, they shipped back to wherever they would assign you to stateside. For me, I was fortunate and returned to Fort Bliss, El Paso, Texas, and decided that I wanted to still serve my country, but wanted my son to grow up around my family for the simple fact of knowing once again that thought there. Fort Bliss, you're going to have a SWA rotation. Who's going to watch your son once you give birth? So I transitioned to the reserves and changed my MOS and became an administrative specialist, 71 Lima, and was a secretary with the 744th MP Battalion in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. After 9/11, our unit was activated. Prior to that, I submitted my E4 application to go from E4 to E5. My unit did not have at the time an E571 Lima position, so I went to MP school 95 Bravo. So I had 3 Army jobs, Kia.
I noticed that.
Yeah.
I noticed that when you submitted your questionnaire.
Yeah.
And I was like, that is so interesting. Couldn't wait for you to explain how that happened. So you were taking care of missiles, then you went as an
Yes.
admin, and then you became a cop.
Yeah. Yes. And it was very, very fortunate in that the reserve unit and the military police designation, our unit wasn't a let's give somebody a speeding ticket or break down a door. Our unit's mission was an enemy prisoner of war processing camp
Ooh.
detainee. So if something unfortunate were to pop up, we would then be deployed to go in and process the refugees or the enemies as they were bringing them in and kind of how we in process into the military, giving them a physical, religion. Do you need to see somebody of religious nature, what have you? And then our unit would then partner with the ICRC, International Committee of Red Cross. Say we were doing a refugee mission and we were seeing a specific last name of a family. We would then reach out to other camps saying, hey, do you have other members of this family, trying to keep that family unit together? Because sometimes you might have kids come through, you might have aunts and uncles go through a different camp. So it's just a matter of communicating and having that network to keep everybody together.
Oh my God, that's amazing. When
Yes.
you were talking, I immediately thought about the camps at the
Yes.
at the border. And I thought
Yeah.
that all those kids got separated from their families. And I commend you for the job that you did of keeping families together, because I think that's so important. And now with everything that's happening in Ukraine, I'm thinking about all of these refugees and how
Absolutely.
important your role would be in helping
Yeah.
these kinds of people.
I've actually had a similar conversation recently. This would be my 20-year anniversary that a reserve unit deployed to Kosovo in 2002 for Operation Joint Guardian, where we ran the detention facility located over on Camp Bondsteel. And 20 years, Kia, 20 years, that's like a lifetime ago.
Girl, you are not lying. Literally, as you were saying that, it's been 20 years since I deployed in 2002. I'm going, oh my God, in November, it will be 20 years till I got out of the military, till my reserve time ended. Like I was
Yeah,
completely detached from the
right.
service. I was a civilian officially again, because I got out in 99, which is
Yeah,
more than 20 years ago now,
yeah,
but I had my reserve time. So, and that was 2002.
yeah,
So, and I'm just like, oh my God, right
yeah,
now I'm going,
yeah.
oh, it's been, oh my God, 20 years.
Yes. And with what's happening right now in Ukraine, when I transitioned from active duty to the reserves, when I was assigned to them back in 98,
Mm-hmm.
my reserve unit trained on Fort Dix at McGuire Air Force Base over in New Jersey. And some of the barracks still had the barbed wire around and were conditioned on the inside for the families that they brought over from Kosovo and the Balkan area the first time we had initially occupied that region for the peacekeeping mission itself. And to see how they had gone into the barracks and put the plexiglass between the metal railings going up the stairs and the landing at the top of the stairs, so that the little kids and the families that weren't necessarily used to having the space between a railing on a stairwell, what have you, so they wouldn't fall in between. It's just amazing what we're able to do for other countries and to help them as people.
I agree. I agree. My heart is definitely very heavy watching everything over there.
Absolutely.
And, we just want this to end quickly and not escalate. I think
Yes.
that's what we're all feeling right now. But standing with Ukraine and
Yeah.
hoping that they can defend, their land. So,
Yeah.
anyway, so tell me about all the stuff that you did as a cop. Like, I'm dying to know.
That I was not able necessarily to do per se. It wasn't all glorified. We were just over there. How I explained it to my son at the time, Braden, was 3 going on 4 when we deployed in 2002, and then 4 going on 5 when we deployed in 2003. I got a nice, lovely world map and I put it on his bedroom wall at my aunt and uncle's with some pins on it. Mommy's here. You're right here. 3 years old. How do you explain what I'm pretty much going to be doing? I just told, I'm a babysitter. Mommy's got to go and sit in the shack and watch the guys so they don't hurt anybody else. How do you explain that to a 3-year-old, Kia?
Wow. I think
I
you
just
did a
broke
good
it down
job.
plain and simple. Mommy's just going over there to protect you, keep the bad guys safe, and keep you safe.
Wow. That's deep.
Yeah.
My God. I have two sons. So I'm
I
thinking right now what I would have
Yeah.
explained that to them.
I have my 6 and 7-year-old nieces right now to kind of let them know the military history that is in their family and what the military has done for our freedoms as a nation. My nieces don't look like me, they look like you. They're mixed. So I know from my experience growing up in my childhood and where we are as a society that they need to be surrounded with not just strong women, but a strong community. I think we may have touched on this previously, but with them being girls, I want them to know that they can do anything a boy can do, and they can even do it better than he
can. Yeah. You know what? I think that's something that we also learn, if not, that gets reinforced when you're serving in the military. I think for me, that was a big takeaway, actually.
Yeah.
For me from serving. Yeah.
I was fortunate in that my father, as I mentioned, was a veteran. So he pretty much had that little like discipline in me and my sister growing up. So I kind of can appreciate that leading me along my path, if you will, to get me to where I am with having the discipline that he had and bringing that in for me and my sister.
Oh, that's amazing. I mean, sometimes it's rough. My stepfather was prior military. Sometimes it's rough, but you know what? A lot of it is useful. You know, you need discipline. You just do. You absolutely need discipline. And I will say this honestly, with my oldest son, when I came out of the military, I was really anti-establishment and I was really tired of so much structure. And I had gone from private school that was like structured. I'd get up in the morning and do chores and then get ready for school and then go to school and then come home and do chores. And then like it was homework and it was like very regimented. And that's what prepared me for the military because I was like, oh, I got that. I got structure. I understand that. So then I went off and I did the military and was like, even actually in some regards, it might have been less structured because I got liberty a little bit more. Yeah. But afterwards I was like, I need just like a rebellion from structure. So when I had my son, I was like so free. We were very, very free and unstructured until I realized I think this is not working out for this kid. Like, I think this kid actually needs more structure. Some people, no judgment, can get to do that. Right. And it's fine. But for my kid, I was like, oh no.
Oh, yes.
This kid needs some structure. I have to shift gears and become exactly what I thought I would never. Not exactly, but you get what I'm saying. Like I had to adopt more of a stricter, more structured. I couldn't be the hippie love mom that I wanted to be, because it wasn't good for my kid. And I think ultimately we make the choices that are best for them. Would I love to be like yes to everything and do whatever you want? Absolutely. Can I? No. No. No way, shape, or form. My kid would take that too far in the wrong direction. But I love him to death, but it's the truth. So the structure ended up being good.
Braden found a way to find the gray in everything. He would find gray everywhere. You had to like, nope, can't cross this. Nope, you got to stay here. You can't do this. Nope. Yeah, no, you had to like explain everything. Are you sure? Those one of those, what was it? The movie Empire Records, where he's like, oh, don't leave the sofa. And then like you see the guy walking with a cushion under his arm. I didn't leave the sofa. It's right here with me.
Loopholes. Yeah, my kid too. Always looking for a loophole that he could say he did. I mean, he's a teenager now, and it's it's gotten a lot. Thank God I implemented structure, because if I hadn't, it would have been way worse. And even we did have a difficult time in the beginning of his teen years, but now that he's pushing 16, we're leveling off, and it's coming together nicely. But I think I caught it right in the nick of time of, oh, this kid needs structure. So let me get this going before he turns into a teenager. And thankfully it's working out. But I do feel you on that. It would have the couch cushion. Any loophole, any way. Yeah. And I think probably a lot of moms out there have had that experience or can relate to what we're talking about. Yeah. Oh, you have a dog too? I have a dog too. You can't see.
That's Scooby.
A really cute dog that just came to join the conversation. This is my kind of talk. Okay. All the animals everywhere. Right now I have a dog and a rabbit. So
cute.
Yeah, Bun. She's my therapy animal. She's my service pet, actually. She just makes me feel so calm holding her. And
that's nice.
Cheers my day up. If anything is going sideways, I can just get the rabbit and just hold her for a while, and we're good. We're good. So yes. Hello, Scooby. You said Scooby.
Yes, Scooby-Doo. Yeah, he showed up during COVID. We took him to Animal Control and Protective Services here in Jacksonville. He was chipped. It took a couple of days, but we were able to reunite him with his previous adopter. And wouldn't you know it, he showed back up 3 days later. I was like, well, not only did you find us once, but you found us twice, so you can stay now.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, that's determination.
Yeah, I have a softy area in my heart for the animals, by all means. I'm an animal person.
Me too. Yeah. Well, I'm glad your pets are comfortable enough to join us and join the conversation and come by. So, in all of these experiences of you traveling, and I know that your son was at home, was that the most difficult part of being in the military? Was that you had
absolutely.
to be separated from your child? And were you in when they still had the policy where you had to give custody away, or were you in after that?
Yeah, I had to have a family care plan for my deployments, being a single soldier. So my aunt and uncle, my dad's brother, had custody of Braden and all the needed documentation to take care of him while I was gone, those 2 deployments.
Wow. See, that's the hardest thing for me. Fortunately, I didn't have any children while I was serving, but that's the hardest thing for me is, I think, actually filling out that paperwork would be just like, gut check. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't easy, that's for sure.
How did you get through that?
I talked to the chaplain a lot in my unit. And when we had time to go to church on our downtime during our deployments, that's where I was, and just talk to God a lot.
Yeah.
To keep me sane. And then I'd call home and I'd get the, Mommy, when you called, I was sleeping. My ears were closed. I couldn't hear you.
Oh, my ears were closed. Oh,
yeah.
precious.
Braden was a trip when he was little, that's for sure.
So of all of your deployments, which one was your favorite? Like all of the places you deployed to, I should say.
That's a great question.
Doesn't sound like it was South Korea.
I would say I liked Kosovo. When we were in Kosovo, we had a 4-day pass and they bused us to Bulgaria. And we went shopping in Sofia and stayed in Sofia for a couple days. And we went through Macedonia on our convoy bus trip to Sofia. So I would say Kosovo, because I had an opportunity to see more than just that one country I was in.
That's amazing. And I guess my next question has to be about difficulties. What would you say was your greatest challenges of your service, your time serving?
That's another great question. For the overall, like deploying to the different countries, just being able to pronunciate and not necessarily piss off the locals for not talking properly when you're wanting to try to communicate, because of there being that barrier in the language.
Mhm.
And in some of the briefings, not necessarily a thumbs up in some countries is always a good thing, or giving
Right.
the peace sign is always a good thing. So it's just learning the different idiosyncrasies and cultural differences, and then
Mhm.
being able to implement them and being able to communicate with some of the local culture that I have then been able to use subsequently after. For example, the neighborhood I live in has a corner store, and the one clerk is Middle Eastern. So I can communicate very briefly in your pleasantry greetings in Arabic from learning Arabic when we went to Kuwait and Iraq.
Oh, it's cool. I can see how that could be difficult though, because, a lot of being American can have its stigmas, right,
Yeah.
in other places. And so you definitely want to communicate. My experiences have been largely good, whereas people like that you're trying to
Yes.
speak the language and they feel flattered. But I
Yeah.
definitely could see where that might be different if you're wearing a uniform.
Yeah.
you know? So tell me, I guess, what's your best memory of serving?
My best memory of serving, I would say, would be my Kosovo deployment. We had an opportunity to meet Toby Keith. He came to the base doing a USO tour, and just being able to have that experience there with some of the different military branches from other countries when we were there in Kosovo. I had never heard the expression, "Can I bum a fag?" before. If you didn't know, "Can I bum a fag?" what that meant, like, I'm like, what did he just ask for? He asked for a cigarette. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't smoke. So that in itself, I just can appreciate and thank myself for taking that step in signing the documents and saying, here I go. I'm going to serve my country.
You know what I immediately love? The way you just said, to take a moment and thank myself.
Yeah.
Do we do that enough? I think all of us that have served, if you're listening right now, take a moment to thank yourself for your service.
Yeah.
I have a little rant that I did at the end of the year about how I feel when I hear "thank you for your service" from people. Okay,
Yeah.
because I'm from a time before they said that. Okay, I witnessed the shift at 9/11 and how
Yeah.
suddenly it became so. I'm a little bit bitter. I'm a little bit bitter about some of the things I experienced before 9/11, even in the 90s as a
Yeah.
veteran. Okay, I'm just going to put it out there and be real with you. But I still really feel like we should say, we should thank ourselves for our service. Okay, that's a badass thing to do.
Yeah.
All right? Like, it was really incredible, especially as women. I think you left your child behind to
Yeah.
do that. You know, I mean, I don't think people, when they're saying thank you for your service, really understand the sacrifices that can be being made.
You're absolutely right.
They don't really fully take into the account the ultimate sacrifice that we are there with the potential to die. And we know
Yes.
that going in. So from the time you sign that paperwork, not only do you belong to the man, you are property. Okay. You are in danger.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't matter if you're in peacetime or wartime.
Mhm.
The fact that you have put yourself in that position means that if anything pops off, you could die.
You're right.
And I don't think people take that as seriously. I certainly didn't take it as seriously when I served. When it hit me? When it hit me that the gravity of serving in the military, I went to see a movie at the base theater, Ross Auditorium. If you served in Great Lakes, you'll remember that spot. And it was Saving Private Ryan. And I remember watching them on the boat at the beginning of the movie and how scared they were. And, guys were throwing up and some were praying and
Mm-hmm.
some were shaking uncontrollably. And I thought I was in my uniform at the time. And I sat there and I thought, holy shit,
Yeah.
those poor guys. And then I was like, oh, I'm like, that could be me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh my God, this is for reals. This is serious. Like mad respect for me
Yeah. Yep.
for doing this so that everybody else can enjoy the freedoms. And you work with a lot of female veterans. So you have these communities of female groups. I do too. I was speaking to a group of women last week. These women happen to be civilian women, and we were talking about what was about to happen, like in Ukraine. And they were really worried. And I said, you know what? And they know that I'm a veteran. One of the girls said, I don't know how we are supposed to carry on with our just like our meaningless lives. You know what I mean? That was kind of what she was saying. When this kind of thing is happening, what happens if we have to go fight? Like what happens? She lives in Hawaii and she's constantly hearing training exercises. Yes. And she's like, what happens if? And she's like, I'm here in Hawaii. And I said, listen. Relax. You're all good. This is what we do. Right? Yeah. We train and we go do these things so that you can focus on your meaningless life. Right? You know what I mean? Like, and just, do mindless stuff like Netflix and chill. You have that freedom because we signed those papers and put our hand up and took that oath and went and did that job. And they're doing it now. Right? And we did it before them.
Yep.
So it is what we do. So I agree with you. I think we should thank ourselves. Okay. And everyone else, like I said in my rant, if you really want to thank a veteran, support veteran businesses, go support veteran not-for-profits.
Absolutely.
And show your love and respect for veterans that way. That's my soapbox. So okay, let's talk about your transition out. What was that like for you?
That was a little different than others. I did not medically discharge. I was not retired. I did not ETS. I discharged in 2003 while my unit was still deployed. I was experiencing some issues with my mental health at the time, and my son was getting ready to start kindergarten in 2003. Do I continue with being here, knowing as we've had this conversation, get shot at, or return back to Pennsylvania and work on my son and starting kindergarten and being that mother for him and building our family? Subsequently, I was honorably discharged and returned home for my son to start kindergarten in September of 2003. And with being in the reserves at the time, I still had a job to come back to. After my transition out, I went to my aunt and uncles who had Braden at the time. I had let my apartment go. I did not know how long our deployment was going to be. So I had my aunt and uncle pack up my apartment and put it in storage and lived with them for a few weeks till we bought a house about 10 minutes from where they lived. It was still in the same school district. I would just have to take Braden to either their house because he had afternoon kindergarten until we could get him transferred in first grade to where we lived. So there really wouldn't be too much for him to miss in regard to that kindergarten period and educational span. Progressed a few years working at the bank. again, some issues with my mental health due to my military service that were undiagnosed at the time. It took some time to get me to where I'm at now. My aunt and uncle that watched Braden during my deployments took me to court and won custody of my son and raised Braden. I did not have that opportunity to be there for him all throughout his childhood. There were opportunities to visit with him, but the aunt and uncle did the child rearing, if that's what you would like to call it. Looking back from my experience and my mental health treatment to get me to where I'm at today, my therapy and classes, I've participated in programs, as you mentioned, with some of the women veteran organizations. I will advocate for all veteran service organizations to let the veterans know, not just whether you're a male or a female, that organizations are there for us as veterans. It may be hard sometimes to ask for help. Please don't hesitate to ask, because that's what they're there for. Had I have known back in 2003 how some of these different veteran service organizations can help us as veterans, I received a devastating phone call in June of 2019. I moved to Florida. 2 weeks after I moved here, a week before Braden was due for his 21st birthday, that rite of passage, Braden passed away of a heroin overdose.
Oh my God.
So from my experience, I will advocate and let the veterans know that if one veteran organization may not have resources, another one may, because they all have different missions. But the mission in itself is the veteran, again, whether you're male or female. I just know, again, from my personal experience looking back, if I would have known then what I know now on how some of these different organizations can help us, my son might still be here, because I would have had more of a support for me as a veteran helping me versus the he said, she said back and forth with my aunt and uncle.
Oh my God. First of all, I have to say that I am so sad and I'm so sorry to hear about your child. I understand. I mean, I have two sons and I understand. I think every woman, especially if you have children, could understand your pain. But even prior to that, that feeling of betrayal
Yeah.
by the people that you trusted, you know, not once, but twice, like the people that you trusted to help you while you were serving your country, taking your, like basically stealing your child from you.
Yes.
Because they had him in his early years. It is painful enough. And I was actually going to ask you this, but I think we get it. Like, it is painful enough to be away from your child in the earliest years of their life, right?
Yeah.
That I imagine that's a sacrifice a mother makes when she is dedicated to doing something she believes in, for the most part, you know? And then to have the people that you trusted to help you during this time, you're already probably beating yourself up and missing your baby like crazy, wanting to be there, to the point where you actually even decided to end your military career to go and be with him as he starts that important transition into school. For them to go, oh, well, we don't want to give the child up. Now, and I don't know what your mental health state was or what your issues were or whatever reasoning that they felt that they were justified in doing this. But I would think that should have been more important for them to try to help you through that time and keep the family, keep you and your son together. It's just my opinion, but That's
Yeah.
how I would think. If you have a veteran who's struggling, you do everything you can to help them. I
Yeah.
know that some people go down a spiral and it becomes frightening and scary, and you don't know if you can help. But I still think we do everything we can, right?
Oh,
And
absolutely. And that's where, again, I will advocate to let veterans know that there's resources available for us so that hopefully my experience does not have to happen again.
and then just to think that all of those years go by where you're not able to be as involved in your son's life, and then this happens.
Yeah.
How are you this together? Like, you're really strong. I really admire you
Oh,
for
well,
how
thank you.
I do. I mean, I really admire you for how you have turned your pain into a mission to help other veterans.
Yes. And that's where the different women veteran service organizations here and the different programmings and my mental health treatment, I've been able to take the two one syllable word, big mouth, and transition that into a single three syllable word, advocate. And I will advocate again for any veteran service organization so that the veteran, as we spoke, is more than just the veteran. It's that spouse, it's that military family, it's that extended family, to let them know that there's resources available to you so that, again, my experience and someone else may have a similar experience, but just to let them know that there's resources available to you. Because again, when I transitioned in 2003, there really wasn't a lot in my area. You had an American Legion, maybe a VFW, AMVETS, maybe, but there really wasn't a whole lot like there is nowadays with your Wounded Warrior Project, your Canine for Warriors, your women veteran service organizations here in Northeast Florida, your Northeast Florida women veterans, your Hope for Veterans. You've got Operation Barnabas that works with the male veterans down in Clay County, Women Veteran Network out of Massachusetts and Boston. There wasn't a lot back in 2003. So again, from my experience and meeting you as well, Kia, just letting the veteran know that there's different resources available. Yes, their organization's missions may be a little different, but ultimately it's for the veteran. And if one organization may not have a resource, they can give us direction to find somebody that can.
Agreed. You know, I have my group, the Barbara Giordano Foundation. She's nationwide. She's global now. So
Yeah.
any woman veteran around the world can receive services from the Barbara Giordano Foundation. Obviously, Grunt Style has resources for mental health as well. You know, we've got Miss Veteran America with her mission to end veteran homelessness, female veteran homelessness, which I super love. And one of my former guests is putting the pressure on me to do that. So we'll see maybe next year, maybe next year. But I'd love to have Jax Booth on the show prior to that and just get a chance to talk to her and hear her story and the story of that organization coming to life. And of course, one of my favorite organizations out there is called Passageways Ltd. And they graduate veterans. Literally, they find them on the streets in the hospital and they get them cleaned up if need be. And then they take them into a home and they get them on their feet. They get them apartment, furniture, cars, sometimes. Like, this organization is incredible. They're based in Kansas. They've turned their attention to women now after our connection. And they're also working on the first ever veteran community with services built in for all the way up from single veterans to veterans with families, men, women, children, and even senior veteran care.
Nice.
It's called Homefront. They're working towards this goal of building this community. And it's just amazing work that they're doing. So as we mentioned, so many organizations, and there's still so many more. There's still so many more organizations out there that are out here to provide support and to provide education and to provide assistance to veterans who are suffering, struggling, want to change their life, want to better their life. There's something out there for you. You just have to find it.
Yeah.
And I love that. So let's talk about everything you're doing with veterans organizations right now, because when I was reading it, I was like, I had no idea exactly how much you were doing. And I'm like, Does she sleep? Does she?
Yes, I sleep sometimes. Sometimes I sleep. I volunteer. I'm a peer leader with Woven Women's Veteran Network. That is an organization that services through peer connection. They do programming online, in person. That's all throughout the United States. Any woman veteran, any branch, any era is welcome to check them out. I volunteer with Hope for Veterans with Lynn Geyser and her events for volunteers in the area that want to come out and give back through Hope for Veterans. I volunteer and help with that. As you mentioned, I am an Army veteran, and we have our own little Women Army Corps itself from the founding ladies that were the initial women. They had to look at some of those transitioning ladies were making that final transition, and if they did not consider opening to all Army veterans, that the Women Army Corps would make that ultimate transition itself and no longer exist. So not that long ago, bylaws were changed from the initial Women Army Corps to include all Army women that served. I have found an appreciation of the American Legion and what they do for the military community, as well as the history of the American Legion, and that they were one of the founding veteran service organizations of what we like to call the VA, Veteran Affairs Administration. So I have learned and can appreciate how they assist and have stepped up to the post-service officer position at American Legion Post 9 here in Jacksonville, which just happens to be home for Boots on the Ground motorcycle ride that they do to support the veterans and first responders community. And recently have accepted the military community liaison position at Veteran Village of Northeast Florida. Has a similar mission you mentioned of the previous home there, where they want to have land for the veterans. As you know, some veterans can afford to live on their own, some can't. This would give the veterans an opportunity to, if they're able to have a sliding scale per se, where they can contribute for rent, or if you can't, you can landscape, take the garbage out, work the land, and that's how you can give back. They're looking at having different areas for the different organizations, the VA, the different nonprofits to come in, Canine for Warriors, Canine Line, all them, to have their own little niche on the property and work with the veterans. Yeah. So that's what I do here. In addition to starting a nonprofit, Skinclusion Beauty Consultant, I was fortunate I had the opportunity to participate in the vocational rehab program that is offered through the VA, and went to beauty school. Wow. And have my beauty license and instructor license from attending beauty school at Metro Beauty Academy in Allentown, Pennsylvania. And how I give back is working with that women veteran and military family. As we spoke, I have mental health issues from my military service, and I can relate to a lot of other women veterans as well. How we see ourselves sometimes when we look in the mirror kind of helps ourselves on the inside feel better about ourselves. So, my Skinclusion Beauty is where true beauty begins inside. So, you want to sit down and play hair, skin, and makeup one day, learn how to properly pluck your eyebrows, properly buff your nails, what have you, learn how to wax your legs yourself. I'm not looking at making money. I want that veteran and military family to feel good about themselves. So it's just another outlet and opportunity for the community. Yeah, that's me.
That's beautiful. I mean, a lot there. People always say I'm doing a lot of stuff. There's a lot there. But I will say it's really awesome that you got a chance to go to vocational rehabilitation.
Yeah.
I was denied that once. I tried to go and they turned me down. Fortunately, I did. So I put myself through school.
Yeah.
But it is a resource that's out there. And I encourage people to go for it. My brother went through it. He's an Army vet, right? I have a history of the military. I have an aunt who is a retiree from the Army. My brother's Army. Most of my family is Army. I'm the one, my grandfather and I are Navy. My grandfather was Navy during World War II era. But I definitely think that you are doing so many amazing, amazing things. And mentioning vocational rehabilitation is something that I don't think gets mentioned enough. You should try. Like, it didn't work out for me, but you should try it. It can help you. My brother did it and it worked out wonderfully for him. And also, the American Legion. Now, many years ago when I lived in Chicago, because I lived in Chicago for a lot of years after I got out of the Navy, before I moved to Florida, I was a member of the American Legion in Martin Grove, Illinois. And I was the only girl that I ever saw. But it was what I needed. I mean, it was exactly what I needed at that time to go and hang out at the American Legion bar with all the old guys and talk stories. They were so good to me. They were so sweet to me. I had such a great experience belonging to that Legion. And I actually liked my ex-husband even better. He was a civilian, okay? But they would let him come because he'd started off coming with me and hanging out, and it would be like date night. Let's go to the Legion. And then that's funny because dinner in the Legion would be a date night for us. And then I'm like, where are you? And he's like, I'm at the Legion. And I'm like, what? Like calling him up, like, weren't you supposed to be home like an hour ago? He said, I thought I'd stop by the Legion and say hi. We had a friend that was the bartender. And then he ended up just becoming like kind of like an honorary member there.
Nice.
So, and then we moved to Florida, which is where I got really familiar with, at that time, what I felt was a lack of services for veterans, especially female veterans. I was very unhappy with my care at the VA Health Center in Miami. By the way, I did not like my doctor, did not love my experience that I was having. Yeah. And so when I connected with Lynn, she was actually on the first season of this podcast. So you can hear Lynn Geyser's story. I believe she's episode 4 of season 1. And that's how we met. And I thought my 4th guest, she took a chance on an unknown girl. Came on my podcast. And it formed a lifelong friendship, which is such a blessing. And I get to be a part of Hope for Veterans, which I cannot sing enough praises about. The peer-to-peer program is essential. It's so beautiful. And what it has the potential to do for women veterans is just is second to none, in my opinion. I think we as veterans, which is why the American Legion is such a good resource, because and why it helped me at a time when I was really struggling, because I needed that energy to be around people who understood me, even if it was a Vietnam vet, I'm technically a Gulf War vet, but like a Vietnam vet, Korean conflict, like, you know, and some of the older guys were like just after World War II type of vets, you know what I mean? It didn't matter how old they were, from what era is my point. What mattered was the energy, that energy of I served.
Absolutely.
You know, and they all respected me for having served as a woman, and they all looked at me like this little girl too. Yeah. But it was what I needed. I needed to be around veterans. And that's what all of these groups that you belong with and you help and support is that veteran community. I did a talk at a Woven event that Lynn was doing, and you know, it meant everything to be able to go and connect with the female veterans. And I've done several of those talks for different female veterans chapters around the country, where I go teach them something I learned from working as a performance coach, and some way to help them. And I created a course.
Oh.
And I am going to, the plan for this course is it's a self-study course on how to achieve your goals faster and sort of build yourself up. And I'm going to be donating it to groups. So once it's all set up where you can log in and do it, I'm going to be donating it to certain organizations that I love to give to people who are interested, so they can take the course and get something out of it. You know, I mean, it for the veteran community is important. This is a course that I will likely sell along with my other coaching, right? Yeah. But for the female veteran community, I think if one succeeds, we all succeed. We all have to help each other up. Yep. And do our part. So I'm going to test it out, I think, with Hope for Vets, which I was going to talk to them tomorrow at the board meeting about. Yay. And also the Barbara Giordano Foundation, and start there. And then we'll see how it goes to get this out to veterans. So that I'm excited for you. Yeah. It took me a year to get it just right. But it's called the Rose Method, and it's everything that I learned from my mentor, Brian Rose, who you will see on YouTube probably at London Real or at londonreal.tv. But working at his Rapid Transformation Accelerators, I've learned a lot. I've been with them 3 years. And I want to take that information and sort of curate it in a way that I think can be beneficial to people, and hopefully help a lot of people to, you know, thrive in life, I think. So absolutely. I think that's what we have to do, though. We have to give back to our veteran community and support each other. And you do it so beautifully. Thank you. I want to say, I know you think yourself, but I want to thank you too for everything that you're doing in the veteran community, especially for female veterans. And I just am so honored that you came to share your story today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you again for the invitation, Kia. I appreciate it.
So I just have one more question for you, and then we'll find out how we can find you. We'll wrap it up. Okay. I'm going to respect your time. I know we've been hanging out for a while now.
It's okay.
So tell me, I know you gave some really good advice at points throughout this interview, or this conversation rather. But what advice would you give, having all the experiences you've had and working with all of these organizations? What advice would you give for our female veteran sisters coming up behind you?
My advice: to get through the initial basic training, initial training for whatever your military branch. It's only temporary that they're in your face. It's just to break you down so they can build you up their way. That's all it is. Once you get past that, it's just your job, going to work every day. Whatever job you do, if you're happy with the job you do, you don't work a day in your life.
Yeah, that's true. Active or when you transition to your civilian life, you know, if you find something that you enjoy doing, it's never really work. This is why I work
No.
7 days a week. My
Yeah.
kids call me a workaholic, but I feel like I'm never working though.
Yeah.
I'm always learning or talking to someone
Mm-hmm.
or helping someone, and these are things that are creating something. So it's things that I love, and I imagine cosmetology is a lot like that for you now.
Oh, absolutely. I enjoy the opportunity to see the client's reaction when you spin around in the chair and they can see, okay, the difference in their hair or the difference that they've had a makeup application or their eyebrows waxed, where it's that instant gratification. I can see it now, unlike our experiences with filing claims within the VA. It's a nice, lovely, drawn out process. So working with the women veterans and the military families, just know it's a process. Unlike getting your hair cut, it's bam, right there. You can see it. It's a process, and we're here for you every step of the way.
Absolutely. Wonderful advice. And so tell us, where can we connect with you if we want to follow along with your journey?
Absolutely. I am on Facebook, Amy Ritter Freiler. I am married and I have my Skinclusion page at skinclusionbeauty.org and can also be reached via email at skinclusionbeauty@outlook.com.
Very nice. And if you've been listening to this podcast or it's your first time, you just need to scroll down in the description box of this episode and the show notes. It tells you exactly what this episode is about. If you keep scrolling beyond that, you'll see more information. And that is where you'll find links to all the organizations we discussed today, as well as Amy's information, where you can reach out to her directly and follow along her journey. So that'll all be there for you. Just have to scroll down, okay, and look for it. And Amy, I just want to say it's been such a pleasure to spend time with you today. I know I get to see you at the board meetings, but we never get a chance to like really have a conversation. And this has been such a blessing and such an honor to hear your story. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you once again, Kia, and I appreciate you as well. Thank you for coming on board.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And the honor is all mine. And thank you guys for having me, being that I don't live in Florida anymore. Right. I live on the West Coast, but I just love it there so much. And I see the need. So it's important. But with that, we're gonna wrap it up. So I just want to say thank you so much for listening. And everyone, go check out Grunt Style. You heard it from Amy. This stuff is good. I like them. I think we may or may not continue on with our sponsorship journey with them. I don't know. We're still feeling each other out. But I do honestly really like their apparel, and I will continue to rock it,
Absolutely.
no matter what happens going forward. And if you want to have a discount, don't forget, use code Baker. And you'll get 10% off your first order with Grunt Style, and check out their foundation and support a veteran-owned business that employs over 200 veterans. So go do that. And thank you for coming on this journey with me. I love you guys, and I will talk to you next time.